In this demo, we'll get rid of returning JSON directly. Instead, we'll create model classes. Like that, we're making the model part of the MVC pattern more tangible. Let's start by adding a models folder. I no longer need to see the hidden folders. There we go. And let's add a class to this models folder. We'll name it CityDTO. We give this class 3 properties, an ID, a name, and a description. There's an important distinction I want to make here. Maybe we're running a bit ahead of ourselves, but I think it's important to already know this. What is returned from or accepted by an API is not the same as the entities used by the underlying data store. Currently, we'll be working with in-memory data, as we're focusing on the API itself. So the in-memory data store we'll work with will simply work on these DTO classes we're now creating. But later on in the course, we're going to add Entity Framework Core to the mix. The entity classes that we'll work on will be different from these classes. For example, a CityDTO might contain calculated fields, like number of points of interest. A person DTO class might contain a full name property, which is a concatenation of first name and last name database fields. These are 2 examples of fields that are not saved as such in a database. They're calculated on the go, and they won't be part of the city entity class. And the other way around exists as well. When we'll learn how to create resources, the model accepted by such a method doesn't contain an ID for a city, as it will be the responsibility of the underlying data store to create that. So that will be another class as well. It won't be the city entity class we'll use with Entity Framework Core. Anyway, I'm diverting a bit. Let's continue. We'll need some data to return. So for now, let's add an in-memory data store containing a list of cities. We'll switch this out for a persistent database store once we learn about Entity Framework Core. So let's add a new class, Cities Data Store. Let's give it a property, cities, which is a list of CityDTO. And let me paste in a bit of code to initialize the dummy data. We'll do that in the constructor. So there we go, 3 cities, New York City, Antwerp, and Paris. By the way, as you can read, the description for Antwerp is the one with the cathedral that was never really finished. It's the city where I live, and one of the symbols of our city really is a big cathedral that was never finished. It was supposed to have 2 towers and look a bit like the Notre Dame in Paris. But the city ran out of money. That may or may not say something about this city. Anyway, back to our code. We also add a static property, current, which will return an instance of this. This is the singleton pattern at work. It makes sure that we can keep on working on the same store as long as we don't restart the web server. Once we learn about dependency injection in an upcoming module, we will learn how to improve on this, but for now this will do. Alright, back to our controller. We can now remove the code we have here and get the cities from the current city store. So we still return a JSON result, but we pass through cities data store .current.cities. Let's give this a try. Alright, let's switch to Postman. And let's send that request to get cities again. And there we go. We get back 3 cities. These are the CityDTOs from our cities data store. We can continue now with implementing an action to return a single city. So we create a new action, getCity, and this time we want to accept a parameter, the ID of the city that should be returned. We decorate this with the HTTP GET attribute, and the URI to this resource is API/cities/the ID of the city we want to get. The first part of the template, API/cities, is handled by the route attribute, so all we need to do is accept the ID. To work with parameters in routing templates, curly brackets are used. Anything we now pass in after API/cities will be bound to the ID parameter. In this method, we return one city, the one with the pass-through ID. We're still working with JSON results, so we new up a JSON result, and we pass through the city with the ID from the parameter list. Alright, let's give that a try. We're back in Postman. In the collection you can find the getCity request. And as you can see, an ID has been appended to API/cities. Let's click send, and we indeed get back one city, the city with ID 1. Let's change the ID to ID 2, and we get back Antwerp. So far, so good. What we also see here in Postman is that the status code that's being returned is a 200 OK. What would happen if we were to send a GET request to an unexisting resource? For example, API/people. We get back a 404 not found. 200 OK and 404 not found are HTTP status codes, in this case automatically returned by the framework. Yet, if we try to get a city that doesn't exist, but lives at a URI that can be routed to an action, like API/cities/5, we get back a 200 OK with a null result. The framework, in this case, does not automatically return a 404 because the URI could be routed. But null is not a correct result. If it's not found, we'd expect a 404 not found. We should be able to check for cases like this, which our code currently doesn't, and we should correctly return status codes. Let's learn why this is so important.